Hello and welcome to VUTV Political Report, where we bring to you a condensed report of worldly affairs. The date is Thursday, October 5th. I'm Lauren Clark.
And I'm Matthew Miranda. Today we will be discussing, in domestic news, the Las Vegas mass shooting, Russia's involvement with Facebook advertisements, conflict between the Secretary of State and the President, the Supreme Court, the Republican tax plan, an education bill in the state of Indiana, and more news from Puerto Rico.
Moving to international affairs, we'll discuss the current events in Catalonia, the travel warning on Cuba, elections in Argentina, the Kurdish independence referendum, and more.
At approximately 10:08 p.m. last Sunday, a single shooter identified as 64-year-old Stephen Paddock began firing on the crowd of the Route 91 Harvest Festival. Paddock fired on the crowd from the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino, where he had set up cameras throughout his suite and hallway. When police attempted to breach his suite, Paddock shot through the door and hit a police officer in the leg. By the time police were able to get into his room, Paddock had taken his own life. Inside of his hotel suite, police found 23 weapons, including at least one semi-automatic weapon that had been modified to allow fully automatic functionality. Police also found several pounds of ammonia nitrate, a chemical used in the production of explosives, in his car. In addition to this, after searching Paddock's home, police found at least 19 more firearms, as well as more explosives. Before conducting the attack, Paddock wired $100,000 to unknown persons in the Philippines. Following the attack, President Trump claimed that the situation could have been much worse and called the actions of police and rescue forces a miracle. The president also says that he will discuss gun reform legislation in the future. However, his administration has refused to discuss this issue so far. On the Democratic side, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and Senators Murphy and Blumenthal have urged Republicans in Congress to pass stricter gun control restrictions. The GOP has refused to comment thus far, including White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who says this is something they will potentially talk about in coming days. In other news, Justin, can you tell me about what's going on in Russia?
Yes, I can. Russia has been a huge story coming out of the 2016 election, and it's not over yet. On Monday, Facebook handed more than 3,000 Russian-sponsored advertisements to Congress. Facebook also estimates that 10 million people saw the advertisements. Elliot Schrage, Facebook's Vice President of Policy and Communications, said that less than half of the ads were seen prior to the U.S. election. The advertisements are also said to have targeted battleground states such as Wisconsin and Michigan. But the same people also say the advertisements focus on non-battleground states such as New York and California. In conclusion, the investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election is still unfolding, and advertisements are not the only way the Russians could have affected the election.
That's pretty concerning to hear, Justin. This past week, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson admitted that he is in direct communication with North Korea through 3 channels to Pyongyang. This is the first report of the current administration having access to direct communication. At the current moment, the diplomatic situation is still unclear. President Trump has been attempting to turn Secretary Tillerson away from diplomacy by telling him over Twitter that he is wasting his time trying to negotiate with Little Rocket Man. Trump has also claimed that he will not fail when it comes to North Korea, as other administrations have, as he refuses to play nice. This is not the first time tensions have been visible between Secretary Tillerson and President Trump. Rumors of Tillerson's impending resignation have been circulating since July 20th, when he referred to the president as a moron after leaving a meeting where the president threatened to fire a top military commander and compared military decision-making to renovating a high-end restaurant. Despite this, Tillerson remains adamant that he has never considered resignation and continues in his attempts at resolving the crisis with North Korea. After this short break, we'll be right back for Justin to tell us a little bit more about the Supreme Court.
In a world where entertainment is at risk, one man is given a mission, but he is about to face his biggest challenge yet. He will race against the clock and open doors to new possibilities that will save weekends as we know it.
What are you doing?
I'm looking for free movies.
Oh, I'll help you with that.
Just go to movies.valpo.edu. They have all the best movies, including The Hobbit and 22 Jump Street.
Whoa, it's that easy?
It's that easy.
Grab some popcorn, grab some buddies, and watch movies.valpo.edu's great selection.
Welcome back. On Monday, the Supreme Court came back into session. They will be tackling many issues that are politically divisive and those that pit national security and individual liberty at odds. The Supreme Court will address gerrymandering, workers' rights, First Amendment liberties, privacy of cell phone records, as well as many others. Some cases being resolved by the Supreme Court will impact the daily lives of people, such as Carpenter versus United States, which will settle whether the government violated the Fourth Amendment when it looks at your cell phone location records without a warrant. Another case that may affect some people is Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado Civil Rights Commission, which puts the baker making a cake for homosexuals to question once again. The angle the baker is taking is a freedom of expression one. The baker does not seem to be a homophobe to the degree of some because he still bakes cakes for homosexual customers, just not wedding cakes. Matt, could you tell us about one of the cases they are taking?
One of the most potentially impactful Supreme Court cases being heard as of now is on an often overlooked topic, gerrymandering. After every census is taken, voting district lines are redrawn according to population and other factors. Gerrymandering is when these district lines are redrawn to benefit specific political parties by minimizing the impact of opposing voters. In Wisconsin, after the last census in 2016, district lines were once again redrawn. State Democrats claim that these lines were drawn unconstitutionally to benefit Republicans and prevent Democrats from being elected. This Tuesday, the Supreme Court had their first hearing of this case. The Supreme Court has set standards on the topic of gerrymandering before, specifically making it illegal to gerrymander districts by racial groups, but have thus far avoided treading into the territory of partisan district lines. At the moment, the court appears to be split 4-4 on this issue. The more liberal justices are primarily concerned about the voting rights of citizens being diminished, while the conservative justices are worried about the Supreme Court turning into a political mechanism and feeling that this may be an issue to be decided by the political branches. Justice Anthony Kennedy is the only unknown vote at the moment and has remained silent on the issue so far. However, in 2004, Justice Kennedy said that extreme partisan gerrymandering could be declared unconstitutional as long as manageable standards can be developed to help determine what constitutes extreme. Speaking of conservatives, Kayla, would you mind telling us about their new proposed tax plan?
Definitely. The Republican tax plan has been a topic of major debate across our nation over the last few months. The proposed tax reform, currently known as the Republican tax plan, has 4 outlined goals: to grow the economy and create millions of jobs, simplify our burdensome tax code, provide tax relief to American families, and lower the business tax rate as stated in an overview sheet distributed by the White House. There are a few key points you need to know and understand about the tax reform. The proposed plan eliminates the 7 different tax brackets and simplifies it to just 3 brackets. These brackets combine multiple tax brackets from the current tax code in hopes to simplify the tax code, provide higher deductions for families, and assist families with child and dependent expenses. The reform also eliminates the alternative minimum tax on inheritances and removes the death tax, as well as eliminates and target tax breaks that benefit only the highest tax bracket. The last portion of this plan is meant to assist businesses within the United States. There will be a 15% business tax rate, territorial tax rates to assist in business equality, and the elimination of tax breaks for special interests. The reform is still in the process of finalization. However, this is a general outline of the changes that are being pursued within the new plan. Next, we are going to take a look at legislation that hits a little closer to home. This month, Indiana representatives submitted requests to delay the implementation of new education standards. First, allow me to give you a brief background on the legislation being discussed. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 was signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson to ensure that all students had the equal opportunity to receive a quality education. The act, which is reauthorized by the incumbent president every 5 years, distributes and allocates the funding and resources for our country's education system. In 2015, President Obama signed the Every Student Succeeds Act to provide a level of flexibility for the states in regards to meeting some of the more strict provisions of the legislation. Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos released a letter in March of this year to address how the states should submit their individual plans and revisions to meet the regulations enacted under President Obama's most recent Education Act. The deadline for the revisions and implementations of the new policy guidelines were April 23, 2017 and September 18, 2017. On September 18, 2017, members of the Indiana congressional delegation submitted a letter to Secretary DeVos asking to postpone the implementation of the new regulations until the Indiana General Assembly in 2018. The outcome of the request to delay compliance with the new regulations has not been released to the public as of now.
Thanks, Kayla. Next, we're going to hear from Melissa, who's going to tell us about the situation in Puerto Rico right after this break.
Welcome back. Hurricane Maria hit the island of Puerto Rico on September 20th. However, the disaster did not receive as much publicity until 3 days after the matter, when mayors from across Puerto Rico arrived at San Juan for a meeting at the convention center. The impact of Hurricane Maria was immediate, to the point where many Puerto Ricans lost all means of communication and were unaware of how great the devastation was in the island. Because of this wide-scale devastation, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, had a difficult time coordinating and communicating in order to assess the situation. Although relief supplies were sent to 11 different emergency facilities, search and rescue teams lacked the resources that were pertinent to the situation, like that of food, water, and generators. Thus, this is an indication that FEMA's response to Hurricane Maria has been slow and unorganized. Yet, many officials believe that the issue at hand with Puerto Rico and the United States is greater than solely managing the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. Governor of Puerto Rico, Ricardo Rossello, says that the political sensitivities and broader issues of Puerto Rico, like their financial crisis and lack of communication from mainland USA, have been around for more than a century. Rossello argues that it is only after Hurricane Maria that the consideration of these issues are being put forth once again to the public's attention. However, President Trump has caused more damage than Hurricane Maria by throwing paper towels into a Puerto Rican crowd and insisting that Puerto Rico pay off their $75 billion debt in light of Hurricane Maria's devastation to the country. Trump plans to meet with Rossello to discuss federal effort for Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria.
Thanks, Melissa. That concludes our domestic segment for tonight. After this short break, we'll be coming right back with Kayla starting the conversation of international news.
Well, I think that's all we need. Thank you so much for coming in. We'll be in touch.
Okay, this is it. Just shake his hand and walk out with your head held high. Don't mess this up. Thank you. Nailed it. Don't let a bad handshake get in the way of getting the job you want. Find out more at the Career Center.
Thank you for tuning in to our international segment, where we bring you top stories from around the world. To start our evening, we are going to take a look at one of the most dominant ISIL-controlled cities within Syria. Here's Kayla for more information.
Thanks, Lauren. Raqqa is currently one of the last remaining strongholds for ISIL in Syria. However, their reign over Raqqa doesn't appear to have much longer livelihood. Currently, a push made by the Syrian Democratic Force, or SDF, is leaving the terrorist organization surrounded and weak with little means to maintain their hold on the city. The United States-backed coalition has been working its way into the city of Raqqa since November of 2016 and has nearly captured all routes into the city. As each day progresses, the strength of ISIL is weakening within Raqqa. Only time will tell how much longer the Islamic State can maintain their hold on the city. Thank you, and now off to Greg.
Meanwhile, in Spain, Catalonia is preparing to declare its independence from the country in a matter of days. The president of the Generalitat of Catalonia, Charles Puigdemont, who is also the leader of the separatist movement, said his government would act at the end of this week or the beginning of the next. Lauren, how is King Felipe VI feeling about this?
Well, Greg, he's not happy, and he's claiming that the vote organizers had acted outside of the law and then called for unity. But the tensions between Spain and the northeastern Catalonia region are only increasing. The Spanish High Court began an investigation into key Catalan figures for having rebelled against the state, and the head of Catalonia's regional police is under suspect for failing to control a demonstration.
The Catalan government announced that the referendum had been approved by 90% of the voters, but is not declaring the final result until the voting is finished. However, tensions between Catalonia have existed since the end of the Franco era. Now Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy of Spain has continued this strife with his reaction to Catalonia seceding Spain.
Yes, Mr. Rajoy decided to use force against the Catalan voters instead of delegitimizing the votes by refusing to recognize the validity of the votes, just as he had done in recent years. His use of force actually confirms the Catalonian referendum to those who participated in it. This is because it is the first time there has been political resistance, and therefore the central government looks upon the referendum as a threat. But Mr. Rajoy faces many consequences with this choice and action, since there is now an increase of Catalonian resistance against his use of force.
We will see how this conflict progresses during the next few days. For now, let's discuss the news on the State Department's travel ban to Cuba. The mysterious acoustic attacks in Cuba continue to create headlines. Last Friday, the U.S. State Department ordered that all non-essential diplomats and their families leave Cuba. This accounts for about 60% of the U.S. diplomatic staff in the American Embassy in Cuba. The U.S. has also stopped issuing visas to all Cubans through the American Embassy in Havana. Included in this suspension are visas included through the Family Reunification Program, as well as visas issued to immigrants and non-immigrants. A travel warning was also issued by the State Department to travelers planning to go to Cuba. So far, only U.S. diplomats have been affected by the attacks, but the State Department warned that since no one has been caught or a device found, the safety of Americans can be in jeopardy. Major airlines like American Airlines and United, however, will largely ignore the warning and continue flights to Cuba. On Tuesday, the U.S. State Department ordered the departure of 15 Cuban diplomats from the Cuban Embassy in Washington, D.C. This accounts for about 60% of Cuba's diplomatic staff in the U.S. The diplomats were given the time frame of a week to leave the United States. The U.S. government still has not blamed Cuba directly. However, with these developments, it seems apparent that the U.S. is at least accusing Cuba of not providing enough safety to U.S. diplomats, something all nations are supposed to abide by through the Vienna Convention. One person, however, at least willing to put the blame on Cuba is President Trump. Upon the State Department's actions on Friday, Trump stated they did some bad things in Cuba. At the moment, it is unclear what overall effect all of this will have on the restoration of diplomatic relations that President Obama oversaw in 2015. The saga of the Cold War, as it seems, continues. After this short break, I'll be right back to talk about the upcoming elections in Argentina.
In a world where entertainment is at risk, one man is given a mission, but he is about to face his biggest challenge yet. He will race against the clock and open doors to new possibilities that will save weekends as we know it.
What are you doing?
I'm looking for free movies.
Oh, I'll help you with that.
Just go to movies.valpo.edu. They have all the best movies, including The Hobbit and 22 Jump Street.
Whoa, it's that easy?
It's that easy.
Grab some popcorn, grab some buddies, and watch movies.valpo.edu's great selection.
Welcome back. Argentina will head to the polls on October 22nd with two issues in mind. President Mauricio Macri has a minority coalition in Congress, but it is believed his party will win more seats. The economy was originally believed to be the main focus of the midterm elections, but new developments have unfolded rapidly, turning the focus to two cases of possible criminal activity. Leftist candidate Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, who was president from 2007 to 2015, is running for a Senate seat. Her run at politics could be a practice run for the presidential elections in 2019. In 2015, Alberto Nisman, a prosecutor investigating Kirchner for corruption, was found dead hours before he was going to give a testimony accusing Kirchner of a cover-up. Recently, a report has surfaced from forensic experts saying that Nisman was murdered. As President Kirchner said, Nisman killed himself because no evidence was available to support the claim of murder. Supporters of current President Mauricio Macri have used this case against Kirchner, while Kirchner's supporters claim she is being framed. Then, 2 months ago, an activist for indigenous rights named Santiago Maldonado disappeared without a trace after being arrested by border guards. Kirchner is accusing Macri of bringing up the new developments about Nisman to cover up the case about Maldonado. Maldonado still has not been found. Ultimately, Argentina politics has essentially become a finger-pointing match, with both sides using possible cases of criminal activity to make a political point.
And to carry on within the realm of voting, let's take a look into one of the most controversial votes of the year. Tonight, we're going to take our first look into the Kurdish independence referendum with Kayla as our specialist on this topic. Kayla, why don't you tell us a bit about Kurdistan?
Kurdistan is a territory in northern Iraq that is occupied by Kurdish citizens. However, this territory remains as a part of Iraq and does not belong solely to the Kurds. The Kurdish people are not secluded to just northern Iraq. In fact, they are scattered into bordering nations such as southeast Turkey, northeastern Syria, and northwest Iran. While the Kurdish people have spent decades fighting for their freedoms, they remain a persecuted ethnicity within their relative countries. The Kurdish independence referendum served to advocate for independence negotiations between the Kurdish government officials and the federal government of Iraq. However, since the vote was announced, and there has been a large amount of pushback, not only from the federal government of Iraq, but from bordering countries as well as foreign nations such as the United States.
But what is the controversy exactly? Why wouldn't these countries want to help the Kurdish people in their efforts to become a sovereign nation?
The major controversy that accompanied the referendum deal directly with Iraq's bordering nations in the fight against terrorism within Iraq. Bordering nations believe that if Iraq submits to the referendum and allows the Kurdish succession, then the Kurdish people of their countries will also expect independence. The second controversial point with the referendum is that there could lead to a division of Iraq at the most important time while fighting within Iraq. The Kurdish people have played a crucial role in the fight against ISIS, and foreign nations see the division as weakening their strength and against the terrorist organization. Regardless of the request to postpone the referendum vote, the vote took place on September 25, 2017, and an overwhelming 92% of voters voted yes for Kurdish independence. While the Kurds of Iraq have been celebrating their leap forward in freedom, nations around the world are still standing strongly against the referendum.
Thank you, Kayla, for clarifying this pertinent issue. Kayla will be discussing the reactions from bordering nations as well as the United States in regards to the Kurdish vote for independence in our next show. Thank you once again, Kayla.
It's been my pleasure, Lauren.
To end the show on a lighter note, we're going to Germany. It's not every day that a love story makes the news. In Germany, however, this was the case on October 1st of this week. Two men, Bodo and Karl, who met when the German capital was still a divided city 38 years ago, became Germany's first same-sex couple to legally get married this week. According to Germany's justice minister, marriage equality is a milestone for a modern society, and this marriage represents a historical moment for Germany. This law was only recently passed in Parliament in June, making Germany the 15th European country to grant same-sex couples the right to marriage.
That concludes our broadcast for this week. We thank you all for watching.
And a very special thank you to VUTV for helping us with this program, as well as all of our writers and anchors here today.
On behalf of the whole team here at VUTV Political Report, have a good night.